So thanks for coming, ladies. I am Sam Diedrich. I work with Adam in Aspirus Business Health. I too am a wellness specialist and work with companies kind of throughout our Aspirus footprint. My specialty is kind of physical activity and exercise. That's what I actually went to school for, was exercise physiology. And I personal trained and taught group exercise for 12 years, and so that's kind of my background. We're going to talk about increasing movement throughout the day. You know, exercise doesn't have to be going to the gym. There's other ways during the day we can get that movement and it still be just as beneficial. If there's one takeaway you get from this, I always tell people the only reason fitness centers exist is because we're not active in our normal day and we're sedentary in our normal day. That's why fitness centers get to thrive. But if we were active in our normal day and got that movement in throughout our day, we wouldn't need the fitness center. We wouldn't need to pay that extra $60 a month. So that hopefully is one big takeaway you can kind of round everything back to throughout the presentation. So we're going to talk about the different physical activity recommendations. We're going to talk about ACSMs, the American College of Sports Medicine, what they recommend, and we're going to talk about the CDC's recommendations for exercise. We're going to talk about the FIT principle. The best acronym, and we're going to actually even develop a FIT principle for each of you, F-I-T-T, and then we're going to use that FIT principle to set some SMART goals. So SMART goals is that specific, measurable, obtainable, relatable, and timely type of goal setting method or methodology, if you will. And then we're going to address some barriers to physical activity. There's a lot of really common barriers that we see every day in coaching, and I'm going to bring some of those up, and we're going to really break each of those common barriers down to give you guys hopefully a little toolkit that you can use to help you overcome these barriers. And then just some simple desk exercises that you can do at work just to get moving throughout the day. It's movement at work, especially, it's not necessarily about burning those extra calories, although that is an excellent perk, but it's really about just keeping our joints and our muscles happy throughout the day. All right, our first movement, everybody stand up. And sit back down. All right, again, stand all the way back up. And sit back down. And one last time, stand all the way up. And hover halfway over the chair. Don't quite come all the way down. And come all the way down. And there you are. We just did 3 squats. So we got a little bit of activity in, and my heart rate is at 100. And I do this almost every single day. So it got our heart rate up a little bit. Granted, me presenting and talking to people and knowing there's a camera right there might up my heart rate a teeny bit more, but my point is that I got my heart rate up just doing those 3 little movements. So the physical activity recommendations for adults from the CDC. So the big takeaways here are adults should move more and sit less throughout the day. That is their first line, just move more. It's not specific yet about how we're gonna do it, but just whatever you're doing right now, do more of it. If you're doing nothing right now, 1 minute throughout the day, just stand up, move around a little bit, and that can impact you. Anything you're doing right now, just do a little bit more. Adults should do at least 150 minutes to 300 minutes of moderate intensity activity during the week. So the minimum goal we're shooting for is 150 minutes. But there's also a maximum on that 300 minutes too. So it's awesome to be really above and beyond, but you're not necessarily going to get the same benefits if you're way above and beyond that 300. But shooting for that minimum of 150 minutes per week is really what we're going for. And aerobic activity should really be spread out through the week. So if there's just one day during the week that you're doing 150 minutes, I'm not saying it's not good enough, but it's not really giving you the benefit that you need, because now you have 6 other days through the week that you might not be moving like you should be moving. And then it's a combination of muscle strengthening activities, so resistance training, and then a combination of the cardio, and then working all of your major muscle groups. So the muscles of our lower body, the muscles of our mid body, and then our upper body as well. Now we're going to compare that to the American College of Sports Medicine. Very similar guidelines. They say you should continue to accumulate at least 30 minutes of moderate intensity activity 5 days a week. There's your 150 minutes per week. And then if you're going to do vigorous activity, so let's say you're training for maybe some ultra marathon type event and you're doing big runs throughout the week, or maybe CrossFit, or even if you're doing like a really high intensity HIIT style training, video at home. If you do really high intensity training, really getting your heart rate up and you're just drenched in sweat, 3 days a week of 60 minutes is good too. The activity, this is my favorite part of this, and this is where we get to really have fun with the rest of the presentation. Activity must be at least 10 minutes in duration to count. So to really get the physiological benefit of cardiovascular activity, to really get the benefits of weight loss, of health and wellness, and everything good that goes with increasing your heart rate, it's gotta be 10 minutes. That's awesome. We could sneak 10 minutes in here and there and play with it throughout the week. We can do a couple 10-minute sessions throughout the day and equal up to 30 minutes. So that statement right there is what gives us the power to kind of be flexible with our activity. And then strength training at least twice a week. So even though we're working our cardiovascular exercise and we're making our lungs great and we're working our heart, we still gotta work our muscles too and keep our muscles happy, because our muscles are what keep us standing and prevent us from crumbling and falling on the ground. I always say too, especially for us here in the Midwest, this time of year it's really important to have good muscles, because that's what keeps us from slipping on the ice and falling, is where we can have really good proprioceptive awareness, so kind of able to tweak and fine tune our tiny little muscles in our body. That's what keeps us from falling and slipping down the steps. It's a big injury prevention aspect as well. All right, so there's the basics of physical activity. That's where all this is kind of starting from, are those two big governing bodies of physical activity. Now let's talk about the FIT principle. Frequency, that's how many days per week are you exercising? And if we keep it within the guidelines that CDC or ACSM recommends, we're shooting for usually 3 to 5 days a week. It's kind of where we're going for, how many days per week. Intensity, how hard are you working? How hard are you working is both an objective and subjective measure. Objective, we can physically measure our heart rate and see how hard we're working, or subjective, like on a scale of 1 to 10, where are you? 10 being you're about ready to pass out and go vomit in the corner from the hardest workout of your life, and maybe shooting for like a 6 on that scale of how hard are you working. We're going to break intensity down a lot, because there's a lot of really fun ways to measure that we can go over with you guys. And then time, how many minutes per session? So kind of referring back to the other slide, so we know the minutes per session should really be the bare minimum of 10 minutes, but we can go up to that maximum of 60 minutes or even maybe a little more if we want. And then type. What mode of activity are you doing? This is the big guy. This is where we get to make it really unique to everyone in this room is going to have a different answer. So what type of activity could be, are we doing flexibility, strength training, or cardio? And then of those 3, what are you going to do for your cardio? Are you going to bike? Are you going to run? Are you going to rollerblade? Are you going to walk your dog? Are you going to sweep really hard in your curling match? Like how are you getting that cardio in? And strength training, are you going to use body weight, dumbbells, TRX, kettlebells? If none of that makes sense, maybe you're just going to stick to body weight and hang out on a mat on the floor, and that's fine too. So type is where we really get to make it individualized to everyone. All right, let's move some more again. So I'm going to have you stand up and just go ahead and just kind of move those feet a little bit. If you're like, oh, this is kind of lame, I don't want to do this, you can just kind of sit here and run in place too a little bit. All right, you guys go ahead, sit back down. See, as you sit down, that's when I stand back up then. All right, more about the FIT principle. So now we're going to break each of those parts of the FIT principle down. So frequency, how many days per week? Like I said, the goal we're really shooting for is 3 to 5 days per week. That's just our starting grounds. That's kind of ideally where you want to be. your goal should be 3, 4, or 5 days per week. That's your end game. So kind of think about in your head right now, where are you? If you're only at 1 day a week, if you're at no days a week, what can you do to adjust that, to get to that goal of 3, 4, or 5 days per week? And then it's 2 days of strength training. So how are you going to sneak that in? Are you going to do 5 days a week and 3 of those days are cardio and 2 of them are strength? Or are you going to do 3 days per week and maybe you do day 1 is strength training and cardio, day 2 is just cardio, and day 3 is strength training and cardio? How are you going to put that formula together and start shaping it? And this is what's cool about this. You get to choose. You have the guidelines. Now you're just kind of putting the pieces together of your puzzle. Intensity. Like I said, how hard are you working? I love to use the Rpe scale. This is the subjective measure. The exercise physiologist in me probably should love the heart rate method a little more, and I do, but we all can't do that unless we have an exercise physiologist prescribe us some exact heart rates for each of us, and that's just not something practical to do, right? But this we all can do and use. So like I said, 0, that's at rest, and 10 is extremely difficult. You're gasping for air. You're maybe the 5 to 20 seconds is as hard as you can do whatever that thing is you're doing. That's the hardest. So where do you want to be on that scale? You know, the recommendations tell us moderate intensity. So if we look at this, 4, 5, 6, and maybe we flirt with 7 and 8 a little bit. Maybe every once in a while in our workout we get to stick those in. But kind of think about, you know, where do you want your intensity to be? You get to choose your number. So next time you're working out, kind of pause for a second, maybe about 20 minutes into your workout, 15 minutes, and think, all right, how hard am I working right now? And use that to gauge. We all have a completely different Rpe scale in our heads, but that's fine. That's what gets to make this a little bit unique to everyone too. So we went over the Rpe, and then the talk test. This is also a really easy one. When I used to teach cycling classes, I always did the talk test. Halfway through the class, I would say, all right, we're about halfway through, have a little conversation with the person next to you. If you're so out of breath, you can't tell them about your work day, probably working a little too hard, and you get to start toning down the second half of this class. But if you can say, oh yeah, my day was great, X, Y, and Z happened, you're great. But if you can tell them about your whole day and how you're dreading to go home and make dinner and your spouse is driving you nuts, if you can get all those details out too with the person next to you, probably not working hard enough. So that's the talk test. You should be able to maybe speak a couple sentences, good and fluidly, but if you can read the whole page of a book out loud, probably not working hard enough. If you can only spit out one good word of that book that you're reading, you're working way too hard. So that's a talk test. And I like that one too, because it's the same concept of Rpe. It's very subjective. It's different for all of us. But it's a really good measure in that it takes into account if you were on like meds, everybody has the same amount of how much they can talk. If you're any other condition going on, it still applies to you that you should be able to speak a couple sentences. And then heart rate. Like I said, this is the most accurate. There's no question about that. But you can't just do this by yourself usually. You have to do it with a professional. Now, how many times do we go to the gym and you get on that bike, that treadmill, elliptical, what have you, and you see the little chart right there, you know, your age and everything? It's not accurate. There's so many things it doesn't take into account. And first of all, it's not accurate because almost any fitness center I've been to in the last couple years, it's outdated because it still uses the 220 minus age, which isn't even the right formula anymore, and it hasn't been probably for the past 10 years. And I actually have what the accurate formula is, just to show you it's really complex, and it's just not practical using that formula anymore. So it's just not the best method to use. It doesn't take into consideration your resting heart rate. It doesn't take into consideration, you know, how long or how experienced are you in that particular type of activity. It doesn't take into consideration if you're on heart meds, like a beta blocker is automatically going to keep your heart rate down anyway, or if you're on some medication that would have stimulant properties, it's going to increase your heart rate more. So it's not the best to use for everyone. So next time you go to the gym and you see that little scale on the side of just ignore it and think about the talk test or the RPE one, because they're going to be much more friendly for everyone to use. So I kind of used a little example here again of how cool using heart rate can be and monitors. So if you do get the chance to meet with exercise physiologist or a very experienced personal trainer, or maybe your physician, and you do get to know your intensities. So if you do go by off how hard you're working based off your heart rate, we give it on a scale of 100% is your max heart rate to 0%. So if you're doing moderate intensity to high intensity, you're probably looking at like 60 to 85%. The example I have up here is 65 to 85%. So this particular example is the heart rate reading from physical activity. It was 1 hour and 18 minutes of physical activity. The area right in the middle, that's kind of the dashed lines, if you can see it, or like the white stripe, that's the range of moderate to high intensity where that person should be during their workout. And kind of going back, I said, oh yeah, you can kind of flirt with 7 to 8 every so often in your activity, to high to really high, and that's exactly what this is. So this is a really good chart depicting that they're staying in their activity. This is HIIT training as well, high intensity interval training, and you can tell every time where the rest period starts, because you see that little drop in the chart where the heart rate just completely comes back down to almost normal. So this is just a really neat example. It's a pretty physically active 32-year-old female. And like I said, it's cardio activity that's done here as well, measured for the hour and 18 minutes. You can also tell in this where the cool down period happened, because almost immediately after you exercise, those last, 5-10 minutes, the heart rate comes almost all the way down to 100, which is basically what I'm at right now, like I said. So yeah, so it is pretty cool how detailed it can be, and our smart watches can help us track this, but take it with a grain of salt, because unless you actually know what you're looking at and reading, it's just very complex. So time. How long are your sessions? Our goal is 10 minutes at least, and 30 minutes per day is a really good, at least, starting point. So your goal should be 30 minutes a day, but if you're not there, that's fine. What can you do to get up to that? Can you do, going back to how many days per week? Are you doing 2 days per week of 10 minutes and then slowly working your way up? Are you doing multiple sessions? This is a very good and practical example to get 30 minutes in during the day. And I think it's a very relatable example for some of us. So there's 3 10-minute sessions. 10-minute morning walk. Maybe we're gonna walk around the street and back and then grab the mail as we come back in. Or the newspaper. Well, nobody gets the newspaper anymore. That's a terrible example. Or maybe we just want to take the dog out to go to the bathroom in the morning. So we're walking outside with the dog just for 10 minutes. And then we got our lunchtime. We only have a 30-minute lunchtime, so first 10 minutes of that, we're gonna go for a little walk. Maybe we just wander around the building for 10 minutes, or maybe we go outside and get some fresh air if it's a nice day. And then dinner. Maybe we're done with dinner, the dog's got to go back outside again, so we do another little 10 minutes. And right there's a pretty easy way to get 30 minutes into the day and breaking up in those 10-minute sessions. But again, that's assuming 30 minutes is your goal. 20 minutes is your goal. How can you break this up to get 20 minutes in? Maybe it's hard for you to get the lunchtime walk in, but the morning and afternoon is much more practical. We're going to talk about some ways for barriers too, to get these in as we address barriers, because there's some really good examples to also sneak 10 minutes in throughout the day. And then type. The 3 big types, the big categories, are umbrella categories: the cardio, the strength, the flexibility. So are you walking, running, biking, circuit training, HIIT, yoga, kayaking, curling, snowshoeing, volleyball, skiing? The list goes on. There's 1,000 things to do that keep you active. So choose what you like to do. Try to have a couple different things. Try to have your nice Wisconsin weather. We're happy in the spring activities. And then we're going to tolerate the weather. We'll get the snowshoes out. We'll find something to do indoors. You know, have two options, because weather is always going to be a barrier for us. So kind of prep yourself in your head right now. Think about what you might want to have. And then strength training, all the different types of things you can do for strength training. Kettlebells, TRX is like those ropes. Kettlebells is like this picture right here. Recumbent bike, I'm not really sure why that's on there. That should probably be up by cardio. Body weight, free weights, so just your basic dumbbells. And resistance bands. Resistance bands are awesome because you can use them pretty much anywhere. They're just very versatile. You can keep a resistance band in your desk at work. Actually, with chairs like this, one of my favorite resistance band exercises is something I do at work. So I have a desk chair, big roll-out desk chair that has a little opening like this, and I put my resistance band around it. I put two little handles on it, and then every so often I just do some crunches with my resistance band in my chair. I love it. It's super easy to do. I'm sitting in the chair anyway, and sometimes it's when I'm on the call and I'm talking or I'm watching a WebEx or something. I can be active while I'm right there in my chair. Anybody got some cool types of activity that you do that's not up here? Any cool new things or trends happening that anyone's doing? I always like to kind of check in, because every once in a while someone's got like something I've never heard of, and I'm like, oh, that's cool, I gotta look into that. All right, so big takeaway too for type of exercise. Don't call it exercise if you don't want to. Maybe exergaming, that's the big new thing too. It can be fun. Wii Fits, Connects, Pokemon Go, those are all really awesome things to do that are fun, and it doesn't have to be exercise, but it's still getting us up and out and about and moving. Pokemon Go is it's a pretty awesome thing that's come out that got people who probably would never leave the house otherwise to get up and be active and get outside and get some fresh air. Granted, there's some other things that are surfacing because of that, but those with a little bit of ergonomic review can be fixed too. So kind of examples of all the exergaming stuff. And then NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. Really, really fancy thing. We just call it NEAT. So you can be neat at work. It's the fidgeters. Me, I'm the fidgeter. It's people who burn calories throughout the day of just kind of moving and fidgeting at their desk. So if you're someone who's sitting at your desk and maybe you like click your pen in the day, that's NEAT. You actually are burning probably only like 5 or so calories, but the point is that little bit of extra movement actually makes a big difference. When we were sitting here and you could have went like this, or you stood up a few times, that's NEAT. That's just movement throughout the day that isn't by definition exercise. That's parking further away, just step counting. If the only thing you're doing is just watching your steps during the day, and you do that by parking further away, and you do that by taking the steps at work, and you do that by just wandering around your house as much as you can, but if all you're doing is just taking steps and you're not intentionally going to the gym and running and so on, that's also just being neat. And then things like sitting on a stability ball. So if you don't have a chair at work and you're just sitting on a stability ball, that engages your core, that engages your hip muscles. It helps with your posture and spinal alignment throughout the day. So all of those things are ways to be neat during the day. And it's not really exercise per se, but it's still giving you the benefits that exercise would. All right, we're gonna do some more activity. So we're gonna do some heel taps. So you're just gonna bring your heels out. All you're doing is just tapping your heels forward. Now this one's a fun one to kind of mix up too. Because if you just take one leg and hold it out, and you can kind of come down if you want, and you can touch your toe. But if you're only here, that's fine too. But really kind of focus on keeping that spine up if you can. And go ahead, bring it to the other side. And you can come forward and touch your toe again. Awesome. A little movement again. All right, so the FIT principle is a great strategy to set a SMART goal for exercise. Because if we use this FIT principle, frequency, intensity, time, and type, we are setting something that's very specific. We know when we're doing it, how we're doing it, and why we're doing it, and to what level we're doing it at. It's measurable because, well, we're measuring how hard we're working, and you're measuring, your days per week. It's attainable because you're doing it within those ACSM guidelines, and you're choosing to do it yourself, and you're making your own FIT principle, so you know it's attainable. It's realistic, again, because we're staying within those guidelines. You're not going way above and beyond. It helps keep us focused. And then it's time-oriented. That's what the first couple parts are of the FIT principle, is the frequency, days per week, and then the time. So it's literally time-oriented. So all of those are ways to use the FIT principle. And ultimately, by using the FIT principle to address our activity throughout the day, it's going to help with your adherence and your accountability. If a goal is being set and you're the one that sets it, you will be more successful at it. But if it's because your physician said it, or your coach said it, or your friend said it, or your spouse said it, or your kids said it, you're not going to be as successful. But if you set your goal, no matter what your goal is, this applies to any goal setting. If you set your goal, you're already going to be much more accountable and adhere to that goal, because you have buy-in. You've created that. You have ownership of that goal. All right, so let's look at 2 examples of FIT principle. Let's look at the beginner. They're starting out at 2 days per week. The beginner, the intensity, they're going to do moderate intensity. They're shooting for like a 5 to 7 RPE. They want to feel like a 5 to 7. They're only going to do 30 minutes per day, but they're going to break that up into 2 sessions. So the 15 minutes in the morning, the 15 minutes in the evening. And then they're going to do that by walking the dog. So in the morning, walking the dog, and then in the evening, walking the dog. Oh, there she is walking the dog. I didn't even know I had that picture on there. Surprise. And then the advanced person. So this is taking the FIT principle on the other extreme. The advanced person is 5 days per week. They're doing a combination of moderate and high, so now they're really getting some high intensity days in, and they're using the heart rate max method, 65 to 85. So let's pretend this advanced person's back to that slide earlier with the graph. It's probably the same. They're doing 60-minute sessions, and their sessions, they got a lot of upper body, lower body, strength training, and cardio, because they're doing CrossFit 3 days a week and then running 6+ miles 2 days per week. So that's a very advanced person. Both of these people are doing ACSM guidelines. They have a great FIT principle. They have an awesome plan. They're just 2 different levels of exercise, and that's fine. If you can adhere to the level you choose and the FIT principle you choose, that's good to go. You know what I wish I would have done? I wish I would have brought pens for you guys, because I would have had you write out a FIT principle right now. So instead, my homework to you is when you get back to your desk, write FITT down on paper and just kind of fill it in. What's your frequency, your intensity, your time, and your type. And then, after you write that out, you're going to send it to Adam. And that goes for everybody watching this later on the video. You're going to write out your FIT principle and send it to Adam. Sorry for the influx of emails, but you're going to have some great coaching sessions now. And he'll help keep you accountable to these goals. And maybe he'll give you ideas of, things that we can tweak to meet these goals. And, with the 30 minutes per day, 2 sessions, I probably already implied, and you realize this, but they don't have to be equal amounts. It could be 10 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes at night. They don't have to be equal. All my examples did that, but it doesn't have to be. So those are 2 really good examples of utilizing it, but just 2 different levels. I think we get really caught up in comparing ourselves to that advanced one. But nobody needs to be that advanced one, especially if you don't want to be that advanced one. But everybody should at least strive and have the goal to be the one of the beginner, because that's good, healthy movement. All right, so addressing barriers. So there's tons of barriers we get all the time. I have these same barriers too. I just have a little toolbox I open when the barrier comes up to kind of keep myself focused. I don't have time. I'm too tired. It's too hot. It's too cold, it's too wet, what have you. The weather outside stinks and I'm not going outside. I'm too out of shape to exercise. That's a big one. Exercise is boring. I just don't enjoy it. You know, we all enjoy different things. Sometimes we just don't like it. And then I travel too much to exercise. So I'm traveling for work and staying in a hotel, or I'm constantly on the road between different locations. So all of these are common barriers we see. So let's break them down. We're going to start with I don't have time. One of the best things you can do to make yourselves accountable is just to make an appointment. Schedule it in, put it in your Google Calendar, make time for it. Once you create it and make an appointment for it, you're going to adhere to it a little bit better. And it's going to, if you go into your calendar and you see that reminder come up and you delete it, that just gave you a feeling that now you have to address too. It might make you feel a little guilty. It might make you, think twice about it, or at least maybe you're going to have it'll come up, and instead of deleting it, maybe at least you just reschedule it to a later time in that day. But putting it in as an appointment is going to keep you a little bit more accountable. And then fit increments of exercise into our schedule. So you saw lots of examples of that, just 10 minutes here and there. And then map out your schedule. Look for time slots that work. Like physically print off your outlook of the week and kind of look it over where you can squeeze exercise in. Kind of examine what your month looks like. Where can you put your exercise in? Anybody else have any strategies you use to squeeze exercise in when you don't have a lot of time? With this one too, and it probably also works for the traveling one. So, we get done with the work day and we're bringing our kids to all their sporting events, and I'm driving them here and driving them there. And what I think is really awesome to do is you drop them off at a sporting event. Why do you have to go back home? Maybe you have to come back and pick them up anyway. Maybe you'll use that hour to walk around their sports complex or what have you. You're probably dropping them off at a facility that is some sort of facility for activity anyway. So see how you can get a benefit for that. That's one of those like a membership to somewhere like the Y, or maybe some community place if your kid's involved in something like that. Those are really good strategies too, because now where they're doing their group or sport team activity, you can be somewhere else doing the activity. High schools are getting this really well now. They're actually making it so a lot of their gyms and fitness centers in them are open to the public after hours. So especially if you got a kid in middle school or high school and you're picking them up and dropping them off, it's a good way for you. You might as well just stay there and work out too. And you're also leading a really good example for your kids. And that's probably the biggest takeaway of that, is you always want to lead as a good example. I'm too tired. I relate to this one a lot. I might not seem very tired right now and seem like I got a lot of energy, but I will tank around 3 o'clock. I get really, really tired around 3 o'clock. So, where can we put that in? Maybe we just take that into consideration. Are you a morning person? Maybe get up just a teeny bit earlier than if you're a morning person and get your activity in the morning. Are you a powerhouse in the middle of the day? How can you sneak their exercise in the middle of the day? So use that night owl or morning person, early bird gets the worm thing. Use that to your advantage. You kind of know what your personality is. See if you can sneak exercise in during those times. A big one here is just remember the good feelings you have after exercise. Gets your endorphins up a little bit. Nobody's ever got done with exercise and was like, oh, why did I do that? I'm so ashamed of myself for being active. Like, you're gonna feel good about yourself doing it. So if you can just get over this, really kind of put yourself in gear and strap on a little bit of grit and just get over that feeling at 3, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock at the end of the day, and just at least get to the gym, that's important. And just because you start out your workout slow when you're tired, chances are at least halfway through, if not sooner, you're probably just going to get this boost of you're in the moment anyway. And then foam rolling, that's actually a really easy one to do at home too. So maybe you don't make it to the gym, just do stretching or foam rolling at home. You can do it laying right on your living room floor. It's still going to give you benefits and get your joints moving. Reevaluate your nutrition intake. What does your nutrition look like throughout the day? Is that really kind of what the barrier is? Is it not that you're tired, but maybe you're just not eating good nutrition, so you're not giving yourself good fuel? So maybe that's it. And then what is your sleep schedule like? Are you allowing yourself to get good quantity and good quality of sleep throughout the night? So both of those things might actually be what the barrier is. Maybe it's not that you're tired from the workday, but we just have other goals we have to tackle first. And Adam can help you with that. Lots of shameless plugs for Adam. Barriers to exercise, the weather. Well, first of all, dressing appropriately. We are not dressing the same for our run in the summertime or activity in the summertime as we are in the wintertime. So maybe we just have to get ourselves some attire so we're appropriately dressed for the weather. And that even goes with shoes. There's actually decent running shoes you can get for the winter time too that got some good grip on them. So maybe that's it. And this is where cross training comes in. So have a plan B. If it's too hot to run, maybe that's where we swim and cool ourselves off. If it's too wet to cycle, maybe we look at indoor cycling options, whether it be going to like a spinning class or just getting on a recumbent or upright bike indoors. And then when it's too cold to walk outside, see if you can do something else. I put the yoga studio one because that's actually a big one for me. If it's really cold outside, I love going to yoga because the room is hot and it's relaxing. It's one of the few times I actually like, oh, it's almost too hot in here and I never get to feel that anywhere else in the winter. But have a plan B. Have something else. Watch the weather throughout the week. You went in and scheduled out your exercises for the week and planned out your exercise and scheduled it as an appointment. Now kind of just have a plan B, something right in the hopper. So if the weather is not like you want it to be or the conditions, or maybe you were going to go to a group exercise class but it got canceled, you have something else ready to go. I'm too out of shape to exercise. Again, we don't have to call it exercise. We can use NEAT. We can use those just movements at work. We can play those exergaming options as well. But the fact is, exercise is a use it or lose it principle. It only gets worse if you don't do anything. So we can slowly sneak it in throughout the day and at least get to the baseline that you want. And we can work on that first. But also, if you're feeling like you're too out of shape to exercise, maybe we just need to talk about some self-efficacy and some confidence building strategies as well. So there might be something else underlying in there as well. But the point is, start out slowly and progress slowly. That advanced fit principle you saw, that was not someone who probably just, hey, today in this session I wrote out and I'm going to do this, and they probably went right into it. I guarantee you that didn't happen. That was probably a very trained and experienced person. But the point is, it's more than you did yesterday. So add on a little bit of something. Just a little bit more, a couple minutes more, a day more, but just make it a teeny bit more than what you're doing. If you're already doing your exercise, but you kind of get, you're thinking about your exercise routine, you're like, yeah, but I don't really do any core strengthening exercises. And all you do is just add one plank, one minute plank into your day. That might make a big difference. And remember, physical activity, it's not a punishment for what you ate. It's actually a celebration for what you can do. You're only doing what you can do, and you're letting your body do what it can do and what it's meant to do, but it's not a punishment for anything you ate. You're never gonna out-exercise a bad diet. That's never gonna happen. So treat exercise as a reward system for what your body is actually able to do, and slowly let yourself get there. It's really never too late to start. If you've never done anything, that's fine. Just add a 1 minute walk into your day and start there. Add a 5 minute walk into your day. Add just doing that plank. And maybe you're not on the ground doing the plank. Maybe you're just starting here. And that's fine. That's still something more than was done before. But most importantly, it's about picking an activity you enjoy. And that's why I like the fit principle so much, because you get to have all the power of your workout routine. It's not a personal trainer telling you, do this. You know the guidelines, and you're just kind of building what you want within those guidelines. Take classes, workshops, just figure out what you like to do. Maybe you don't even know what you like to do yet. Just try different things and get different ideas. Don't be afraid to use your resources. any fitness specialists you have, or Adam, or just talk to your friends and see what they like to do, and maybe how did they get there. If you talk to a marathon runner, they never just one day was like, I'm going to run a marathon. There was something that happened to get them to that mindset. So maybe just have a conversation with someone who is one of those super advanced athletes and just, hey, how did you get here? How did you start? What got you to where you are? And then working out with a friend is so much more fun. You're going to keep each other accountable. If you skip your workout, your friends are going to go, hey, Jane, how come you weren't at class today? Well, now you're just held accountable for it. You might even get a text message from Jane right after saying, oh man, I wish you were here.